Tattoo artists and body pissers of Reddit, what is the most uncomfortable job you have had to do? NSFW. I got my first tattoo when I was 18. Went into some walk-in shop in downtown Vegas. First half of the tattoo goes well. Outline is down and he started shading. Then he disappears for an hour. He finally reappears. Goes, sorry man. My boyfriend is a tattoo artist and owns his own shop. He once did a tattoo on an uncircumcised gentleman of a rabbit right on the head of his penis. And a top hat on the foreskin. So he would have a rabbit coming out of a hat. He's also done Where's Waldo's head on the head of a penis. And tattooed a teabag, like a Tetley teabag, on someone's scrotum. The stories he tells me are phenomenal and I don't know how he does it. Makes me wonder how many seemingly normal people are walking around with odd tattoos and piercings on their genitals. Finger goes in Cheeto bag. Finger goes in mouth. Finger grabs navel piercing. Why is it infected? I'm a tattooer. But not too many personal stories. However, my buddy who is a pisser was piercing a ginormously fat lady's hood. He couldn't hold up her belly and pierce. So he ran duct tape under her gut and had her hold it up like reins while he worked. Another friend of mine had a girl OD and die while getting tattooed. Don't take pills, kids. I had to tattoo very early in my tattoo career. Snoopy's doghouse around an older woman's vagina. When I asked why, she said, so when my husband lets me off I can send him to the doghouse. Fun times. I read Snoop Dogg's house and got really confused about why you'd want a tattoo of that. Of course. A real tattoo isn't any better. Someone I used to know pierced his own sister's clit. Do you have to stimulate it to pierce it? Been piercing for nearly 10 years. Now. One time I had a rather elderly gentleman come in. He was in his 70s. Wore a pink 3-button polo shirt. Khaki shorts and golf shoes. He was in need of a jewelry change out, as his old jewelry was old and tarnishing. He had his Prince Albert stretched to a diameter of 9/16 of an inch. And it had essentially caused the urethral lining to pucker out of his piercing and dying holes. Quick change out and clean up. And he was on his way out the door. As he was leaving he asked for my name as he put his hand out for a shake. I told him my name and he replies, "Nice to meet you." I'm Dick. At this point I lost it and started to laugh so hard I cried. He realized his folly and laughed with me. I'll never forget that. I was getting a tattoo. And this big homeless looking guy walks in. He looks at me, my artist, and takes his shirt off. He turns around and shows us the dragon tattoo that is half complete on his back. He then looks at my artist and says, "Can you make that into, like, fire truck or something?" My artist just exhales deeply. As I can guess this guy does this a lot or something. And says, "Give me a few minutes to finish this up." A fire truck? I am a shop owner. And about a week ago a 20-something guy came in and said he wanted a tattoo that day. We were completely booked for the day. But one of our artists talked to him about what he wanted and scheduled him an appointment for the next day. He said he wanted RIP, full name, with a wax drug bag next to it. Okay. A little weird. But not the strangest request. He leaves a deposit for his appointment and makes a comment that money is no object. About an hour after he leaves, a police officer comes in. He said he was looking for this guy because his girlfriend wanted them to do a welfare check on him. Because she was afraid he was suicidal. Turns out the name the kid wanted in his tattoo was his name. So, R-I-E. His name. We were told they were going to continue looking for him. But if he came in for his appointment the next day to call them. He didn't come in for his appointment. I hope that he got the help he needed. And I saved his deposit for him if he ever comes back. At a shop in Los Angeles years ago getting some work done. Asked the same question to the piercing lady. She said a guy comes in regularly. Full business attire. 3-piece suite. Briefcase. Oxfords. A real Patrick Bateman type. The first time in he wants to get his dick pierced. So he goes to disrobe and from his waist to his mid-thigh he is covered in Disney tattoos. Like covered. Donald Duck. Mickey Mouse. Pluto. The whole gang. He also already has a dick piercing. Actually he has close to a dozen. After his initial visit he came in every few months to add a dick ring or Disney character. She said he was the weirdest client she's ever had. When I was in my 20s I was a body pisser and I managed the shop I worked at. A rather large woman requested a horizontal hood piercing. This is not uncommon. What was uncommon was her anatomy was very small. I could barely find her lady parts. So her clitoris was very small and her thighs were very large. She was also very nervous and kept clamping her thighs together. I tried helping her breathe and relax. This did not help. Finally threatened her that if she didn't stop clamping her thighs together she would have a needle in her thigh and a crooked piercing. She somewhat cooperated and I finally got her piercing finished. One of my worst ever experiences in a woman's crotch. Edit. I stand by my body. Former pisser here. I have also had this situation. I think, was with her and she kept shutting her legs so he wouldn't be staring at her snatch so I had to make him leave. On a related topic. A guy I know found out the hard way not to stand near a bonfire with nipple rings. It was just as hilarious as you think it might have been. I was getting a tattoo a couple months ago. And my friend came with me. Because he was thinking of doing some work himself and wanted to check the whole process out. He's asking the artist a bunch of questions. And he finally got to the big one. He leans in close and goes, "What's the weirdest you've ever tattooed on someone?" We got two really good ones. Well, the first paid job I ever had was a bunch of stars coming out of a girl's ass crack. I also did one where a guy wanted his girlfriend's name on his arm. Winso. That's not the bad part. They had already broken up. My friend is a tattoo artist and had some trashy lady and her gangster looking boyfriend come in wanting nasty as tattooed across her back. Because it was her boyfriend's pet name for her. My friend refused to do it. After some debate. She told them that if she still wanted the tattoo in a year, she'd do it for half off. Thinking the problem was likely to take care of itself. A year later. There they are again. Reluctantly. She relented. After explaining this would be hard to remove. Hard to cover up. And reminding her that it was legit permanent. 2 weeks later. She was back wanting it covered up because they broke up. He stayed with her for that year just to see if she would do it. Not a tattoo artist or pisser myself. But I remember the pisser being extremely annoyed that day. Why? You ask? A guy was in there 3 days earlier to get his member pierced. He came back 3 days later. When I was there to get a tattoo. To come back and complain because he thought it was infected. As soon as the pisser said, "Why do you think it's infected?" I saw in her face that she regretted ever asking. The guy got the piercing. And then proceeded to do his girlfriend up the Hershey Highway the next day. She spent the next half an hour nearly screaming from the stupidity of the guy's actions. Even after she told him to not have sex or anything of the sort. He wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. As someone who had his member pierced, I'm pretty astonished he was able to even have sex with it. The first 3 days I was healing it was painful to even walk around. Let alone jam it in some holes. Last time I was getting a tattoo I asked my artist this question. Apparently at least once a year someone tries to get the tip of their dick tattooed. He apparently has an $800 flat fee and a $300 ball handling fee with a no refunds policy. Earn it or burn it, so to speak. Apparently a guy tried and lost about 1/2 inch of the first line and bailed. My aunt used to run a tattoo shop up until 3 years ago because it was in a bad location and she got a good enough offer of sale. My favorite story of hers was that someone came in on street Paddy's Day and wanted a tattoo of a shamrock around their asshole. She refused at first, but then the person offered her $2,000 and since the person was almost entirely sober she did it. After hearing this story I remembered that my cousin's birthday is the 25th of March and she got a really nice laptop for it about 6 years back. I'm pretty sure her computer had been bought with butthole money. Edit. Had he not Patty? Edit 2. Apparently there was enough luck in that an L shamrock for me to receive gold. Thank you. A co-worker of my dad's used to run a piercing tattoo studio before he got into the IT business. He got an email from a guy asking if it was possible for him to progressively gauge out his dick hole to the point where another man could him up his own wang. That email got moved straight to the trash folder. It is possible. For anyone wondering. Tattoo artists will do just about anything for $2,000. I lived 4 years next to a tattoo parlor. Got to chatting with the guys inside. Surprisingly, they're not that bothered by genitals and the like. It's sort of a rite of passage for them. Most of the people who've been there long enough to are just numb to everything. So there's really no uncomfortable. Though they do bitch about all the people who come in wanting the generic stuff. Girls who want butterflies. Dudes who want the prayer hands or other gang style tats because they wanna seem tough. It was kinda surprising how many of them consider themselves artists first and tattoo people second and find the job really monotonous until someone comes in wanting something spectacular or something they can just run wild with. My artist told me that when he was tattooing in Phoenix, a woman would come in on a regular basis to have him dry line, tattooing without ink, her inner thigh. She would apparently pay for his time and tip him well if she was satisfied. A guy wanted a tattoo of a piercing, so I meet her. I had to write the word gooch on. Well, I'll let you guess. 4 knuckles and the base of the thumb? I'm not into tattoos. But having the words power gooch written across my knuckles sounds immense. An old roommate did tattoos and piercings. I get home from work, walk into the kitchen, and see this dude spread eagle laying on the counter getting his dick pierced by my roommate. Before I say anything, my roommate says they wouldn't let us do it at the shop. And the guy getting his dick pierced looks at me and says sup. Grabbed the beer from the fridge and watched the magic happen. My early years were I'm crazy. I saw a waitress get her nipples pierced at a bar in Milwaukee years ago. Everyone was gathered around, wincing. I said to a girl next to me, Jesus, that's gotta hurt. She immediately whipped the neck of her sweater down, exposing her pierced tits, and said, nah, it's not too bad. I have one nipple pierced, one for the boys who like piercings and a nipple for the ones that don't because I am a giver like that, and I didn't even feel it when it was done. Casually scrolling through wondering if the tattooist who did the eyes on my ass has commented. I make custom body jewelry for a living. One of things I make are custom chastity devices. I've had to measure gentlemen for devices and other erotic play jewelry many times. Not to mention call customers and talk to them for upwards of an hour multiple times in the process of making their jewelry. The customers are always very nice. As far as it being awkward or uncomfortable, I guess I'm just desensitized at this point. I'd be happy to provide proof if desired. Obviously I cannot provide pictures of clients, but I can provide pictures of what I make. P. SICJ. My ex-husband is a tattoo artist. He had this older lady that would regularly come in and get work done. She eventually asked for the hip bone panty line tattoo, roses and guns. I think I got the privilege of being in the room while ex-hubby did the tat. Every time he'll touch her with the gun, she would immediately tense up and then let out a huge queef as she was untensing. Good buddy of mine got a gnome laying in a SI pose on his taint. The phrase he ain't no gnome like a taint gnome has been thrown around quite liberally. I used to work with this guy who wanted to be a tattoo artist so bad. But he was horrible at it. He had his own gun and ink and would get off work and tattoo himself at home. His arms were covered with these incredibly not at all straight lined stars, clovers, other little tie symbols like that. Then he'd come into work and show them off and make fun of me because I never paid less than $300 for a tattoo. It was always awkward and uncomfortable for me. When you tattoo people, you have to shave the area. I had this big fat guy come in for a back piece, so in the middle of me shaving another man's back I quoted the Family Guy line where Peter tells Meg, shave a man's back Meg and he'll poo like a walrus. Everyone in the shopping lost it. I don't really have anything against fat people, but I think fellow tattoo artists know where I'm coming from. Sometimes people want tattoos over some roles. This is challenging because you kinda need to stretch the skin and it doesn't really look that great when the skin reverts back to the roll. Hard to explain. But imagine trying to tattoo over someone's fat rolls. It's hard to explain that to the customer without being blunt, which made them off. If you just do it and they realize later how tight can look, they get head off. Tattooing fat people in certain places sucks. Long story short, I tattooed a really fat chick on her back. She didn't like how it kinda got distorted. I told her if she lost weight it would straighten out and look good. She wanted a refund. Tattooer for a couple of years and this happens far too much. I'll be tattooing someone's forearm, which means my face is usually right by their hand. This is awkward enough being a female and experiencing at least one boob brush, usually accidental, per forearm tattoo. But something you wouldn't think about until it happens is the fish fingers. I've smelled so many vaginas on people's fingers, and it's just the oddest thing to smell out of context. Here I am in a professional setting, working with my client, and I suddenly know what they were doing an hour before. And even worse, that they didn't wash their hands afterwards. How many other people's love juices have I touched unknowingly, not having gotten a whiff of their fingers? Dated a body pisser. Used to help when I could cause she ran the shop alone. Was afraid of being robbed I think. Anyway, she was giving a girl a tongue piercing and we had gone through the normal stuff. Do you have seizures? Heart problems? Allergic to metals or latex? Blah blah blah. Well, the moment she puts the needle through this girl's tongue she has a full-on seizure. My GF is panicking. Mom, I think, and friends are panicking. I'm trying to remain calm and think of what to do. Mom faints and hits her head on a counter, bleeding everywhere. I tell my GF to deal with that. I take my belt off and wrap it around this girl to keep her arms at her sides. I make her friend hold it tight. I manage to steady her head and quickly pull out the needle. Left the clamps there cause that noise. After she stops and comes to, she tells us this has happened before at a place down the street. I was 2 3-hour sessions into my back piece on a snowy Colorado Saturday when a large biker walked into the otherwise deserted shop. Larry, my tattoo artist, hollers at him from the back to take a look around and pop his head in with any questions. After a few minutes, biker Bob comes into the room, takes one look at my blood and ink smeared in process back and proceeds to pass out, all 400+ pounds of him. Larry hops up, tries to revive him while I try to help while also trying to keep my lady bits covered up. After a few minutes Bob comes to, sits up and comes back into reality. All he said before leaving was women's damn tough bitches. And then he walked out, while we broke out into hysterical laughter. I remember seeing a picture of an anal piercing somewhere but I can't recall where it was. Anyway, professionals, what are your thoughts on that? Also, don't Google anal piercing. Very few things that come up by Google pictures have something to do with that. I googled it before I even finished reading your post. Not me, but a very good friend runs a body mod shop. They've done all sorts of weird things, putting all sorts of things in people, but the story she always tells is about this woman in her late 40s who very obviously got off on having her crotch tattooed. Apparently it's fairly common for people to enjoy the sensations around their privates, but this woman was demanding the most detailed design done over her entire pubic region, which took several long appointments of her laying there being ultra creepy as my friend had to pull and tug her saggy skin so she could work on it. The whole time the woman was moaning and groaning and secreting all sorts of foamy fluids. Apparently from the state of things it was pretty obvious genital pain was a fetish of this lady. Covered in scars and deformities, my friend described it as looking like a bulldog's bonds. There was one time when I was set to pierce this 16-year-old girl's nipple, legal where I was at the time. And when I pierced it she moaned. And her mom was in the room and shot me daggers with her looks. As if it were my fault. Not an artist or pisser, but I used to work at a store that sells body jewelry. I had an old man come up to me asking for a 2-ga hoop for his Prince Albert. For those who don't know, dick piercing. I went to show him the options. He insisted on showing me pics on his cell phone of the piercing. I was like, no. I understand what we're talking about. I don't need to see. But he persisted and shoved his phone in my face. I looked quickly and was like yep, knew it. Anyway, over here. I tattooed a rose on a 50-year-old lady's butt crack. She insisted that the stem disappear into her crack. After adding length to it twice because it still wasn't long enough. I straight asked her, do you just want it in your asshole? She looked back over her shoulder at me and said yes please. I had her bend over the chair and ran the stem right into her butt lips. It was awkward to say the least. I've also had people pass out on themselves. My friend had a lady in white shorts diarrhea herself when she fainted. All kinds of. I love my job. I even met my wife there. A friend of mine, a dude, gave another dude a Prince Albert. The guy getting the piercing came on my friend's hand immediately after getting the metal rod put in his member. My friend said that that was his first and last Prince Albert. I've had to clean out my fair share of nasty belly buttons before piercing. You'll be amazed at how many people don't clean their belly button. I'm talking like nasty, dried up, black yellow chunks of only God knows what. Clean your navel. People. Also, please shower before coming in and getting something done below the belt. We all stink. We all know it. My face has to be right there. I'm no tattoo artist, but one time a tattoo artist walked into a bar and just yelled who can draw. And half-heartedly raised my hand and shrugged out a yeah I guess I can. And the guy says alright. Come with me then. So next thing I know I follow this dude to a party. Cracks open a few beers. Asked if I ever tatted someone before and I said no. And he said well you're about to. Not a tattoo artist, but I think this belongs here. A couple of my friends started doing tattoos while they were in college. They all lived together and we partied at their place often. One of my friends has a notoriously hairy ass. And got Jesus shaves tattooed across his butt cheeks. A couple months after that, we played a game of hangman with a tattoo machine on that same friend's thigh. Holy crap, that's trashy. My friend got his nipple pierced. And he often used to lift his shirt up in English and scream. So look at me. My English used to find it hilarious. After reading your comment, I doubt you were ever actually in an English class. My brother is a tattoo artist, and on one of his first days of being an apprentice, a 50-year-old typical looking suburban man walks in asking what type of dragons they can do. He picks his favorite and my brother's trainer asks where he wants it to go. The guy, straight-faced as, says tattoo it on my dick. I want the head on my dick and the wings and the chest on my nuts. Some 5 or 6 hours later the guy wakes up from being passed out cuz of the pain with a red dragon tattooed on his nut and dick. This happened when I was an apprentice. Some woman came in and wanted heart is everything in the Disney font. The tattoo was huge and on her entire side. She had it printed out. And my artist had stenciled it and I had prepped the station. Well, he was tattooing her and I realized that everything was spelled incorrectly. He hadn't gotten to it yet. So I frantically told him that he needed to go smoke a cigarette with me. After a great deal of nagging, he went out to smoke with me and was pretty aired off about it. I told him about the incorrect spelling and he basically shat bricks. We went in and talked to this woman about it. And even after explaining that it was spelled incorrectly, she insisted that was how it had to be.